As the old saying goes, there are two certainties in life. Number one, death. And number two, taxes. We can't help you with death, but we've got you covered with taxes. This is Ask the Tax Attorney. As you know, the federal government doesn't play when it comes to owning taxes, but too many people freak out about it. So if you're a business owner and you're in trouble, or you're afraid you might be in trouble with the IRS, this is the show for you. Your host is a tax attorney with over 20 years of experience, and she's helped clients erase over $4 million in tax debt. So let's get to it. This is the Ask the Tax Attorney podcast. And now your host, Claudia Moncars.
I want to welcome everybody to our next episode today of Ask the Tax Attorney. And I am so excited today because we have a great speaker that I think our listeners will love. Her name is Shani Curry, and she's a personal finance expert. And we met before, Shani, and one of the great things that I think about you is that you help people that have credit problems. And it's my experience that usually when you have problems with the IRS, you tend to have problems, with other areas. So I am so excited to have you here. Thank you for coming and joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So one of the things that I always like to say that, yes, we are professionals, specialists that we help our clients. You help your clients with personal finance and me with tax resolution. But at the end of the day, we're also business owners. So we understand a lot of our clients' pain points, I think just from a personal perspective. So one of the things that I always ask all our guests that they come on the podcast is to please tell us their story of their personal business story. How do you end up being a business owner yourself?
So I have always had a strong passion for financial systems. Always, when I graduated from college, I have a degree in journalism, and I spent a little bit of time at the news station, and I didn't really find the work that I was doing as gratifying in terms of just kind of sharing, what was happening. I think that when I'm able to work with people directly with making financial decisions, I can have a stronger impact than someone who is just kind of sharing information. I know having access to information can sometimes change your decisioning. Having the opportunity to work as a banker, having the opportunity to sell cars. Now as in the last decade, I've been working with individuals to improve their credit scores. So it's my way of helping people be less stressed, because I think when you have a better handle on your personal finances, you're just a lot easier to work with, a lot easier to connect with, a lot easier. So
I agree that 100%.
Yeah. So it's really about my life work for when I'm interacting with people, whether if I'm interacting with them individually or if I'm interacting with them as a group, that hopefully when we interact with each other, that I'm not one of the people that stress you out. And if you do have stressors economically, hopefully I have a solution that can assist you in, resolving it.
Yeah. I'm a big believer that I think, and I always say that I'm like half woo-woo lawyer because,
I'm half
okay. I know numbers people, we have to tell we're half woo to keep our numbers street credit. But because I think if part of a lot of your money mistakes that you make is just that we pile them up and we feel shame and guilt on them. And there's people that don't even tell their spouses about their credit problems or tax problems. And I think if you just let go and you forgive yourself, it's just you help so much. That's one of the things that I always tell clients, you just kind of have to forgive yourself because we all, I know there's a lot of people even, no matter how much, what you do and how much whatever you do, you always end up having some tax mistakes. I made mistakes myself on tax wise, and I'm sure it's the same thing for credit, right?
Yeah, I'm sure, right? So the good thing about having some type of forgiveness, because we're half woo-woo, right? Because a full woo-woo, because sometimes when you're full woo-woo, it can kind of numb your responses, right? Because you think it's just going to work itself out. And it is, but you have to
do something.
Yeah, you have to have some level of responsiveness to whatever it is. You need to have whatever your spiritual connection is to kind of ground you, to give you the support to kind of work your way through it. But you also need that bit of physicality, responsibility, to kind of get you through it, so forgiveness, the emotional forgiveness might, that may never go away, like, dang, how did I mess up on this? How did I have a late payment? How did I get behind my time? How did I get this? That may the emotion of it may be, ongoing, but you can do some things in, a good, strong action to minimize, the physical penalties of your frustration. So that's why you want the me and yous enter the space. I know you got tax debt. I know you haven't paid it. I know it's a little, overwhelming for you to face it, but here's how you can finally climb out of it. You don't have to continue to relive it over and over again, at least when it comes to purchasing a home, at least when it comes to applying for a credit card, at least when it comes to getting a car. Maybe you're still working through the emotional forgiveness, right? But at least, your credit score looks better. At least you have more money in the bank. So you and I are twins in that way.
Yes, I agree. I think, yes, I'll rephrase myself. You have to do forgiveness and an action. You can't have one without the other. And I think if you just do the action, eventually you'll get back to getting money trouble if you don't forgive yourself.
Yeah. It might take sometimes for me, like some of the things that I've done or I've said, I'm still forgiving myself for it, because sometimes it gets up in my mind and I can just kind of like cringe, So, but at least I've done some things to kind of move on, emotionally, I might still be working through it, but in terms of my actions, I'm putting, actions in place not to continue to relive that mistake,
Yes.
And that's the thing when it comes to money forgiveness and money mistakes. The mental forgiveness may come over time or not, but you still have to kind of power through it so you can move on. Sometimes I have clients that have A1 credit, 780s, and then they can just get busy and forget to, that payment, So everyone who has credit challenges are not necessarily, horrible with money, the same with taxes. You're not just horrible with it. It's just that you might have, made a mistake. You could have had a loss in the family. You could be going through a divorce. Something could be going on with your children, or maybe you went on a vacation. I mean, there's just so many possibilities that will come into what brought you to where you are.
Yeah, I agree. And then one thing that you mentioned is that sometimes when we need to kind of take action, especially if we want to get a mortgage or a loan. And when we were talking a little bit before this, a lot of times people finally decide to deal with their tax debt is when they finally want to buy that house, when they want to get a loan. What are some of the things that you think that you can recommend for that? Like how to if some of the things that we can do to help be able to facilitate that loan or get there when you have credit problems.
Yes. So if you're thinking about purchasing a home, or sometimes you may just need access to more cash, right? Either in the form of a credit card, in the form of a car loan, you need access to other people's money, right? That's what loans represent, having access to someone else's money, whether if you're trying to get a business, trying to get a business loan, a car, a credit card, whichever of those. The checkpoints is to first have that type of mentality that I'm getting ready to ask somebody for money. And then I ask myself, okay, if someone was getting ready to ask me for money, right? Here, South Florida, where you and I are, that average house, the average you can get is 380. My friends that are realtors are saying, well, that's the average, Shani. Like, none of my clients like those houses. So there's that. Right?
Yeah.
There's that, right? So let's just go with the average. So the average for a house is $380,000. So the question would be, what about me would want to give someone $380,000? What about it, right? What about my work history? What about my work history will make someone trust me and say, hey, I'm going to give you this $380,000. What about my current debt? How do I pay my current debt that now I want to ask someone for money? How do I pay my current debt? Am I on time? Do I keep good utilization? Meaning, even though they're giving me $1,000, I'm not using 500, which means I'm not living off of this credit card, right? Do I have a whole bunch of inquiries? Meaning, am I excessively applying for credit over and over again? And then it's now causing my credit scores to go down. Those are some base level things that I would do. So put yourself in the mind frame that, okay, I'm getting ready to ask someone for money. What position would I need to be in for someone to feel comfortable enough to ask me for some money?
Oh, it sounds almost like you're dating, about to go on a date or getting a job.
No, it sounds like you're asking for money. Yeah, it sounds like you're asking for money, which essentially is what you're doing. You're asking for money, whatever it is. If it's a car, you're asking for $35,000, $25,000, a house, $380,000, a credit card, $5,000. So who do you need to be for that person to say yes?
Got it. Okay. And I'm sure you have, especially, that's an interesting going from being a journalist to being now doing a personal finance expert. So
it's all investigative reporting.
No, my mom was a journalist too. So I think, so I think, and I always tell my son, one of the most important skills is to be able to communicate. So that's great that you have that background. So my question is then, I'm sure you have a lot of great stories about just, and especially in a journalist, you will be able to give us a good story of how just in your practice, in your everyday practice, about some of the clients that you dealt without giving us details, but how you'll be able to help them out.
So the first way is to, oftentimes my clients will come to me because they just feel a little overwhelmed, right? They feel overwhelmed by so many different things. So I can think of two of the clients that I've interacted with today. So one of them was unemployed for maybe about 30 days. She was making six figures, but she was kind of living up to the brim when it came to her day-to-day expenses. So dealing with job loss from the period of crossing over was very, very demanding for her. So working with me represents, okay, now I'm finally outside of the space of no longer having, not being unemployed, and now I'm employed. So I don't want to live paycheck to paycheck anymore. I want to be able to, be a better manager of my money because I know what it's like to undergo job loss. So I don't want to have the experience of that. So that was that one client. And then my other client, she happens to be undergoing a divorce, and she feels overwhelmed by the expenses of the divorce, feels overwhelmed by just the transition of it and what that will mean for her and her financial independence. So that gives you an idea of, how my clients may make it to me and what they may be experiencing. So those two people are very, very similar in terms of feeling overwhelmed and needing a plan as well as accountability to be able to navigate through these transitions.
And I think a lot about, I've noticed also a lot of times when you have tax debt is that you are living, like you say, paycheck to paycheck, or like your next project to your next project. And that way you'll never be able to get out of that cycle. I mean, is it just as simple as making like, well, to me, but I always tell them you just have to kind of live up to your what you should be. And especially the IRS makes that even smaller than the average person, what they consider your standard should be, which is bananas. But no, I mean, what they think for somebody in South Florida with a husband, two poor people, family should be spent in South Florida. I'm not sure who they will be leaving, but that's okay. We'll leave the IRS do their thing. But how do you help your clients, just to like get into that live within their means and just like cut the fat out? Because when you see like, I get to see all their statements and all their bank statements, and I see things that but we have to kind of like get in track and kind of like, and I think sometimes, like you said, it's just they're overwhelmed and they may be spending money where they shouldn't be because they have to take care of other issues. So how do you help them? Is it just like creating a plan for them?
So one part of it is the plan, and then the other part is going to be the accountability, because most people can sit down and write a plan independent of you and I, right?
Yeah.
Most people kind of know that they need to pay their tax debt. They may be frustrated or sitting on the phone and holding on when it comes to the IRS. But for the most part, they know that it's going to be a payment scale and they got to pay X amount of money either way of these, right? But something is typically going to feel like just emotional disconnection, right? Sometimes when I'm working with people, I listen to what they say and they restate the same things over and over again, right? Although I heard them the first time, they'll tell me the same thing maybe about 2 or 3 or 4 times. For instance, the client that was, without a job for maybe about 30 days and had to live through that 30-day period. She also got a certification for a school that did not, they didn't finish out the accreditation, right? So she picked up like this $10,000, a credit debt from a sort of certificate program that never even finished. And so it's not on her credit report. It's not there. So I said, well, until it makes it to your credit report, this is not a huge concern for you. It's not on your credit report. She said, but I've been paying them $120 a month. I said, you need to stop paying them $120 a month for a school that has lost their accreditation. She might have said that to me maybe about 2 to 3 times. She continued to say it. I said, there's 2 people that you need to reach out to minimize the communication that you have to have with them. You have to communicate with the CFPB, right? That's going to go where you can go and file a complaint on any financial institution that may be harassing you, especially when it comes to your credit report, you don't actually owe them. Okay. Then I told her to reach out to the Better Business Bureau so that she would be able to have that as a way to document this particular scenario. You have 2 pieces. Go to the CFPB and file a complaint, and then you go to the Better Business Bureau. You now have 2 pieces of documentation that you can use in the event that you need to go to court. It doesn't matter how many times I offered her that solution, the emotional and intellectual frustration that was attached to the phone calls and the emails and the harassing that the company was doing to her, it didn't seem like a solution to her. So that's why I said it's not so much about the plan, because even when you have actions, but when you feel overwhelmed, sometimes you don't choose the most responsible thing to do. You don't even hear the most responsible thing to do. So that's why my relationships with my clients become a lot about not just having a plan, but the accountability for the execution of the plan. You almost need someone to say, hey, I gave you a solution for that maybe about 4 times. Are you going to put that plan in action? And then somehow they will. But this is also a person who's been dealing with job loss for the last 30 days, not knowing what they're going to, what their new job is going to be, all this extra stuff that you're dealing with. So I shared that with you just to share the emotional climate of why people often know what to do, but still don't do it, because there's this gray space in between that they often need to sit down and navigate through, or they need accountability to kind of power through it.
No, I love that, because a lot of times I get clients that come to my office with a stack of an open mail from the IRS. And it's the same thing. They just stick it in there, or they don't want to do anything. Or like I said, they just come because now they have to buy a house. They want to buy a house, so they have to deal with it at that point. Or the IRS froze their account, so they kind of have to deal with it now. So no, I love that. So, first of all, thank you for getting so much information. And I mean, I realize there's a lot of times when there's I always had this, what's the word? I always had this, I guess my suspicion that every time they have, I know that they have an issue with their taxes, they have issues with their other credit, but I never, I guess, thought about it that they will also have the same emotional issues they translate when they have to their other debt. But yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times, like I said, I've been practicing for over 20 years, and I only one time had one client that actually was evading taxes. Everybody else was actually, they just made a mistake, or they didn't know, and then they got overwhelmed. Somebody got sick, things like that, or the economy went bad, and then they went upside down. So
they had some type of life instance, and and then there's so much information right now on social media. There's so much information. And then people want to implement all of the information that they hear. They want to write off their entire lives. They want to write off everything that exists. And
at once.
They want everything. Before they make the money, they want to spend it and write it off. I've never heard such lunacy, never, everything. G-Wagons, you name it, right? They want to write off their life.
They want to implement all the plan at once.
Yeah, all at once.
Themselves again.
For money that they still haven't made. For a business that has been open for 6 months. It's ludicrous, right? So after a while of trying to implement all of these strategies at once, oftentimes what it does is it does create that little bit of tax liability, It does create that. So, and tax penalty, right? So it does create that. So that's the other thing that I would do is just make sure, kind of test some of the things that you might hear. I know sometimes it's easier because that's a lot of advice that's, you don't have to pay for it, right? You don't really pay for it. It's just there on social media. So you feel like you can do it, you can implement it because it's no cost, immediate cost, right? But the costs do come over periods of time of you not knowing. Your negligence is very, very expensive. So having access to a tax attorney that you can even call in or you can do a consultation with it might be more expensive than what you pay to listen to, a barrage of information. It may be more expensive immediately, but over time, the wisdom that you get from communicating with someone who's been doing it for over a period of time can really save you, especially now where it's the information age. You can write off everything. They want you to write off everything all at once.
No, and I think I mean, like I said, when I first started in business, like you want to implement, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this great. I became I did an S election so that I could get all this tax savings because, all the tax wisdom that I have, I'm going to implement it on my business. But then, like you said, I got busy with work and business and clients. I didn't do it properly. So I didn't always pay myself a salary because, I was the only employee at the beginning. And then the state of Florida is like, why aren't you paying any reporting? I'm like, I'm the only person. I don't need to pay myself all the time. And then it became such a mess that I had to get a friend that specializes, with that to help me out. So even, so I always think you should go to the specialist for that.
Yeah, I had that even myself. Initially, when my business started out, it was an LLC. And as my earnings increased, I moved over to an S corp. And prior to being an S corp, my tax liability as an LLC was just outrageous, So I ended up picking up, some tax debt, right, from moving over from an LLC to an S corp, and it's not something that I could have known. I've had tax reduction since then, but that did happen maybe about my 6th or 7th year in business, so it's not. So oftentimes when we have financial challenges, we start to feel that, we don't know what we're doing. It's too much. It's so bad. We're so bad. And all these things that we say to ourselves, intellectually and emotionally, but you can't possibly know everything all the time,
Mm-hmm.
Can't, no matter how well studied you are. And when you're showing up in one place, there's a deficit in another, when you wake up in the morning to go and work out, it means you got to ignore your business for about an hour. You understand what I'm saying?
No.
When you know what I'm saying? So it's always that, you're always giving and getting, that's just the way that it is,
So yeah, no, I love all the information. And then for our last question is, and you already given a lot of great information. And I personally am going to go back and listen to all this. I can
Thank you.
digest some of those tips too. But what can you give for our listeners, our business owner listeners? What is some advice that you can give them, or tips? Just like something that to avoid having to get into that continuous credit problem, or money problems, or just something to help them not feel so overwhelmed, because things happen, especially when we're business owners, we have like 10 different hats half of the time. So what do you related to like your monies?
Okay, so the number one thing that I would do is I would assemble a money team, right? Mm-hmm. I would have someone who was my attorney, right? I would have someone that would make sure that I have proper insurance for my business. I would make sure that I had a relationship with someone that was in the credit industry, because that is a person who knows FCRA, because that's something that I use on a regular basis. So
quick question about that. Do you mean like a personal finance expert like you, or a banker?
It could be either or, a banker may understand their particular bank, depending on their skill level. I can't say that, but having a relationship with the banker is helpful. Having a relationship with someone like myself, even if you're not my client per se, if you're just following me on social media, if you are, doing a free 15-minute consultation, just creating that relationship. So if you do have a question, it's not necessarily dry, you're not sending, just a dry email or anything like that. So the first thing would be, even if I'm not on your money team, even if Claudia's not on your money team, you need to have someone that you can ask this information to. That would be the first thing. The second thing is write down a list of financial things that you are avoiding. Write down things that you're avoiding right now, whatever they are. If it's your credit card debt, your tax debt, your mortgage debt, whatever it is that you're avoiding right now, and then give yourself some advice on it, and then connect with someone that's going to hold you accountable for it. So whatever it is that you may be avoiding right now, whatever it is, we all have something that we're avoiding because we can't do it right now. There's always something like, I can't do that right now. Like in my mind, I'm like, there's no way I can do that right now. But through a partnership, through a connection, I can do a little bit, and then that'll get me to my goal. So the first thing would be assembling a team. The second thing would be is look at a list of things that you may be avoiding at this particular time, and then attach some deadlines to it. Attach some deadlines to some of the things that you are avoiding. And if I'm your person, or Claudia's one of your persons, to assist you in navigating through whatever you're financially avoiding at this particular time, then make sure that you communicate and connect,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my team and I are good at following up with people.
Yes, mine too.
No, I mean, that's great. I mean, I love it. It's very support. I mean, the advice is very supportive, but also at the same time, take some action. So I really, really love it.
Yeah.
So Shani, if somebody wants to, and I hope they go reach out to you because this has been wonderful advice, how can they reach out to you? How can they contact you?
You can find me on my website at personempowerment.com. You can find me anywhere on social media under Person Empowerment. I do offer a free 15-minute consultation where if you have a burning question and you just want to get it answered, we can do that. I also have on my website a budget. So if you do not have a budget, that shows you what's coming in, what's going out, and what's left over. You can run over to Person Empowerment, click budget, and then you would be able to assemble one of those.
And I recommend going to your website and your YouTube because when we talked before, I sat there and I listened to a lot of videos, a lot of great advice.
Thank you.
This is just a taste. So to all of our listeners, and Shani, once more, thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate it. And to our listeners, thank you for listening to us and talk to you soon.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Ask the Tax Attorney podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. And if they're in tax trouble, they will too. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.